Okay, the next paragraph here in the Orchos Yosher is, I feel like I want to give an introduction that I should apologize in advance for the sharpness, the charifness that he uses over here to describe what happens and what we should understand when people don't abide by the proper laws and the proper anhaga, the proper way of davening in shul, in makom kavod, all the different things. I feel like I should apologize in advance because it's so charif what he's about to say. But I'm reminded of a story that took place one of my first years that I was here in Los Angeles, and I was giving the Sunday morning women's shiur in the upstairs of the kollel, and I wanted to tell over a story about how much women should appreciate the Torah learning of their husbands, and I was very apologetic before I told over the story, because I felt that the story was I felt that it was an extreme example of just how much a wife would go through in order to allow her husband to be able to learn Torah. So I told over the following story. In Shivas Ner Yisrael, there's a Rabbi by the name of Tzvi Einstadter. Tzvi Einstadter lives in another world. He doesn't live in this world over here. He lives in the world of Ruchnius, of Torah, of mitzvahs. He doesn't drive. I'm not sure he knows what a dollar bill looks like. He doesn't, the kitchen, I'm sure he doesn't know which side is milchigs, which side is fleishigs. His wife takes care of everything. He sits and he learns yoymam v'layla all day long. One night, I went to go food shopping, and as I'm driving back into Yeshiva Lane, I see there's fires, there's an inferno coming from one of the apartment buildings. Building 401 in Yeshiva Lane. There's fire trucks, they're on top of the roof, they're chopping into the roof, there's hoses, and everybody that is in that building is running out for their life as the fire is going on. And I see Rebbetzin Einstadter. She's holding a child in one arm. She's got another baby, she's clutching to one thigh, another one she's clutching to the other thigh, and she's running as everybody else is running out of the building. And I thought to myself, I guess Rabbi Einstadter probably is taking the other kids. He must be out already. Fine, that's what I thought. Later that night, Baruch Hashem, the fire was under control. They got it out. Nobody got hurt. Nobody was injured. There was a lot of damage, but Baruch Hashem, nobody got hurt. I went to night seder. I went to learn that night. And 11:30 when I was leaving the Beis Midrash. So as I'm walking out the Beis Midrash, there's Rabbi Einstadter. So Rabbi Einstadter and I are walking down the path that's heading towards his burnt down apartment building. So I said, Rabbi Einstadter, what's the message? What's the message of the fire? So he looks at me and he says, first I have to see what happened, then we can decide what the message is. So then he says to me, he said, I heard that my family is in another apartment building, they're sleeping there for the night, I have to go back to my apartment and get a few things and I'm going there. He says, well, I have to think about it. So it occurred to me that Rabbi Einstadter was not there at the time that the fire broke out, and his wife and his kids had taken the baby by themselves and ran. So the next day in yeshiva, I was telling over to them, you know, Einstein didn't even know there was a fire, he didn't know what was going on. Does anybody understand what that means? So somebody said, I'll tell you the story. Every night by dinner, Rav Einstein eats very quickly, and then he runs back to his room where he gives shiur, where he gives his Gemara class, and he sits and he learns. So everybody else is sitting eating dinner. He runs back to the blot room, as we call it, where he prepares, and he's learning and he's learning and learning and learning. So the night that the fire broke out, it was like no other night. He ate dinner, it was regular, there was no fire in the building yet. He went to his room where he gives shiur, and he's busy learning. Fire breaks out. Oh, the fire engines, the whole yeshiva lane is seeing what's going on. Everybody's running out of the building. So one of the Bachrim runs to Rav Einstadter's room where he's learning, and they come in and say, Rebbe, there's a fire in Rebbe's building. So he looks up from his Gemara, and he says, did my wife and children get out? They said, yes, Baruch Hashem, they got out. He says, was anybody hurt? They said, no, Baruch Hashem, nobody was hurt. Everybody made it out of the building safe and sound. He says, okay, very good. Zok de Gemorah. And he went and he continued learning the rest of the night until he finally went and he met his wife at around 11:30 p.m. and to see how she's doing, how she handled everything. So I told over this story to the women of Tarzana after I was only here for a couple of years. And I apologized before I told over the story because I thought perhaps I would offend them by such an extreme story of a woman whose love of Torah was so great that she's willing to run out the building by herself, not ask for a husband, not bring him in, because she didn't want to disturb him from the learning that it was. And he himself understood his wife. When they told him there's a fire, he sat, he kept learning, no problem. So after the shiur, a couple of the women came over to me and they said, "Oh, we're so offended." I said, "I told you it's a very story." "No, we're offended at you, that you would actually doubt that we can handle such a story. How dare you don't have the faith in us that we would be able to handle such a story of women that support their husbands in Torah learning." So I was going to apologize for the next words over here in the Orchos Yosher about how charif, how stark he is, but I'm afraid that you're going to say to me afterwards, how dare you not have faith in us that we can handle the words of Rav Chaim Kanievsky in the Orchos Yosher as he's about to burn up the world with the things that he has to say. So that being said, perhaps we will. No, we still have time. Okay, that being said is like this. Rav Chaim Kanievsky says the following. If I remember exactly where we left off, he says like this. I don't remember. A person has to be very careful in the laws of tefillah, in tefillin, and when they put on their tefillin in the morning, umalbush karoi, how they dress when they come to shul to daven to Hashem. Ki al pi din chayav liyispal bebegodim elyonim. According to the letter of the law, a person has to make sure that they are wearing outer garments at least. Ulechasais kol guva b'tznius, they should cover themselves modestly. Ka'omed lifnei hamelech, the way in which they would stand in front of a king. Now I think that when Bill Clinton was the president, and he used to go jogging in his boxer shorts on public TV, and everybody saw that that's the melech of America, so it did a great job of diminishing the proper honor that we have for being in the presence of great people. But we're not talking about great people, we're talking about being in the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, a person that would be standing in the presence of the king, you go to a chasana, there's one way that we dress. You go to a ball, there's another way that you dress. You go to a big, very important meeting. A person goes to an important meeting, they don't show up casual mode. They come to an important meeting, they're dressed up because they have to put their best foot forward. So, again, I'm not saying how a person should dress when they come to shul, but he's saying over here, it should be karoi, it should be fit for the way that a person would speak to a king. V'udina the Gemara, this is the law that it's brought down in the Gemara. There is no room, says Rav Chaim Kanievsky, to be mizalzel, to be light and lenient in these areas and to make a disgrace out of how we stand in davening, v'afilu b'kites, even in the summertime. A person in the summertime, we know it's not so easy. It's hot outside, you're busy playing basketball, you're doing hiking, you're with the kids, you're coming out of the pool. It's the whole thing. Not so simple in the summertime to always walk in the shul and feel I'm standing in front of a king. Says Rav Chaim Kanievsky, I guess no coincidence that we're learning this during the heat of the summer in Los Angeles. We also have to be careful. Rather, when a person davens to Hashem, they have to stand be'ema, with fear, uviyira, and awe that they're standing before the Rabbi Shalom. So that's his the first words that he says over here in this next little section that is quite important, just to sum up what he's said up until this point. But we have to remember, as we mentioned many times, we're standing before the Rabbi Shalom. A person standing in front of a king, he treats the whole experience. He treats differently, he talks differently, he acts differently, he dresses differently, he shows up differently. If you had a meeting with the king, nobody shows up late to the meeting with the king. Doesn't happen. They won't have a meeting with the king next time. That's how it works. A person works. I would imagine that if Trump was the president and you showed up late to a meeting, so that was it. You're fired on that day. You didn't do what he wanted you to do. That's it. You're gone, out. And I'm not saying that he dealt with everybody in the right way, but you have that power. You can do such a thing. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm the Melech. You're coming to speak to me. So we have to come with the proper cover, the proper honor and respect. So I didn't apologize in advance because there's no reason to apologize to such chosh of a group like this. We're just getting warmed up with all the wonderful things that we're going to learn, and Be'ez Hashem will continue tomorrow.